be joined by Congressman Adriano Espaillat, the chair of the Congressional Hispanic Caucus, and someone who will be delivering the Spanish language address in response to President Donald Trump's appearance before a joint session of Congress on Tuesday. Earlier this week, House Republicans passed a budget resolution that sets in motion the largest Medicaid cut in American history. Children will be devastated in the city of New York and beyond. Families will be devastated. Seniors will be devastated. Everyday Americans with disabilities will be devastated. Hospitals will potentially close here in New York State, in rural America, and across the country. And nursing homes will certainly be shut down. Every single House Democrat from New York City, from New York State, and across the country oppose this reckless Republican budget, and we will continue to do so as long as the health care of the American people is being targeted, as long as nutritional assistance for children and families is being targeted by the extreme MAGA Republicans, and we will certainly continue to stand up for Head Start and for Meals on Wheels and for veterans benefits and for the things that are important to everyday Americans. Cost of living here in New York City and across the country is far too high. America is too expensive. Housing costs are too high. Grocery costs are too high. Childcare costs are too high. Insurance costs are too high. And utility costs are too high. Cost of living is too high here in New York City and across the country. President Donald Trump promised to do something about it. In fact, he promised the American people that grocery costs would go down on day one. But costs aren't coming down, they're going up. Inflation is up. Why? Because Donald Trump and the Republicans aren't focused on addressing the high cost of living in the United States of America. Instead, they are focused on jamming their extreme, reckless, and harmful budget down the throats of the American people. Chair of the Congressional Hispanic Caucus, Adriano Espaillat.
Thank you, Leader Jeffries. Again, this is a devastating time with these proposed cuts for a district like the one that I represent, where you have 524,000 Medicaid recipients, just slightly over 100,000 Medicare recipients, 200,000 plus households that take food stamps. So these families are going to be devastated with these cuts. And of course, seniors and children and people with pre-existing conditions, folks that really rely on the Medicaid system for health care, will be facing a situation of life and death. And that's what this is all about. Beyond the soap opera between Elon Musk and some of the recent secretaries nominated by the Trump administration, there are some real hurtful proposals that are being put in motion. And these proposed budget cuts is one of those proposals. And the intent is basically to give the very rich a huge tax break. So not only are working class family getting hurt by these proposed cuts, but the savings that they will get from these cuts will go to huge tax breaks for the very rich. And so at the same time, they continue. This morning, the leader and I met with a family of a U.S. citizen. Get this, a U.S. citizen who was detained and questioned by ICE on his way to work. A couple with twin boys, they're both U.S. citizens. He had ID, He had the real ID, the new driver's license. And yet he was stopped and questioned for a significant period of time by ICE in a New York City subway station. So this is what's happening in New York while they're perpetrating these massive cuts on the healthcare system. So we're here to say no. We voted united, and the Congressional Hispanic Caucus, a very diverse caucus that has people that represent border districts, East Coast district, West Coast districts, North and South, is united in the pushback. Thank you.
A U.S. citizen detained unjustifiably and unlawfully right here in New York City, a New York City subway station, someone whose brother-in-law protects and serves this city as a New York City police officer, presented that ID but was nonetheless detained and is now dealing with the trauma of that incident along with his entire family. We believe in securing the border. We believe that there's a broken immigration system in the United States of America. It should be fixed in a comprehensive and bipartisan way. We believe in standing up for dreamers, farm workers, and families. Violent felons should be deported. Law-abiding families should be respected and protected. Questions?
Adriano, ¿me podría decir en español?
Sí, sí. Sí, estamos aquí primero para denunciar los recortes del programa de Medicaid y de los cupones de alimentos que proponen los republicanos y la nueva administración de Trump, que va a devastar a nuestras comunidades. Muchos de los constituyentes que yo y el líder Jeffries representamos dependen del sistema de Medicaid, de Medicare y cupones de alimentos, de manera que estos recortes van a devastar a nuestra comunidad. A la misma vez, esta mañana nos reunimos con una pareja de ciudadanos americanos que el esposo fue detenido por ICE en una estación de tren, no obstante a que es ciudadano americano y que le enseñó identificación que enseñaba que él era ciudadano americano. Fue interrogado, detenido por un tiempo significativo y ha quedado sacudido y traumatizado él y su familia, al nivel que todavía no están preparados para venir públicamente frente a las cámaras. Pero nos reunimos con el líder Jeffries y esta familia y le estamos prestando toda la ayuda necesaria. Gracias.
I have two questions. The first one is, could you give us some more details on how this, you said it was a family that was detained, or was it an individual? Which subway stop? How did it come to your attention?
It was an individual who was detained, a U.S. citizen. The family right now is traumatized. At some point, they may be more comfortable in presenting their story publicly. We are helping them to deal with the trauma. The situation was brought to my attention by Congressman Adriano Espaillat. I think we can say they are Dominican American. They live in the district that I'm privileged to represent. It's my honor to represent them, and it's a shame that they've been unlawfully targeted. And the family is concerned that they're not the only ones in New York City and throughout the country that this has happened to under this administration.
And my second, former Governor Cuomo likely entering the mayoral race. Both of you were among the elected officials that asked him to step down amid allegations of sexual misconduct. I'm wondering, how would you consider a potential mayoral run. Would you support it in any way? And if you did, what kind of message does that send to the women who made those allegations? And there was an investigation by the state attorney general on those accusations.
Yeah, I have no comment on the possible entry of Governor Cuomo into a mayor's race until he makes that decision.
Same here. I'm involved in a coalition of leaders, clergy leaders, business leaders, and electeds that will be listening to any and all the candidates for the mayor's race.
Thanks.
What do you think about the entry of Adrian Adams possibly? And then I have another question too.
Similar to Adriano, there's a group of African American elected officials, clergy members, community leaders that I'm in conversation with. I expect that those conversations will accelerate over the next few days as the field grows. But until I'm able to have discussions with those leaders and, most importantly, the people that I represent, I have nothing further to say about any specific candidate, and I have no intention at this moment of endorsing anyone until a candidate emerges from the Democratic primary.
Well, on the work of the city council, are there any concerns that you have with Adrian Adams's legacy, her short tenure as council speaker? I mean, how many stops act, but she's also been someone that stood up against Adams. And as you're talking about immigration, has said, you know, it has been a forceful, I guess, opponent against ICE's reentry into the city. What do you make of that?
There's a lot going on in the country right now. In fact, there's a lot going on in the world. As House Democrats, we're in the middle of it, trying to protect the people of New York City, particularly as it relates to the reckless Republican budget that my colleagues are trying to jam down the throats of the American people. The largest Medicaid cut in American history is outrageous. And at the same time, we're seeing a flood of extremism being unleashed on the American people every week, every day, sometimes every hour by this administration, much of which is being reversed by the federal courts, Republican appointed justices, judges, as well as Democratic appointed justices and judges. And that's going to have to continue. And at the congressional level, we're going to continue to stand up for the American people.
I wanted to gauge your response on Mayor Adams' lawyer asking this week that the federal corruption charges be dropped. And also, you know, what is your level of concern about his cooperation with the Trump administration?
It's going to be important for the federal court to probe decisively whether a corrupt bargain was struck between the Department of Justice and the Adams administration with respect to these criminal charges. Nick?
There was a bill moving in Albany that stalled to change the way that special elections are scheduled in New York. It seems Representative Stefanik, now that the Republicans have passed the House budget, may be moving towards confirmation and creating a vacancy here in New York. Is that bill in Albany, as far as you know, which you supported, is that dead, or do you think that that may come back?
It's a question that are directed at Governor Hochul as well as the legislative leaders. It's a good government proposal, as far as I am concerned, that should be considered whether Elise Stefanik is in Congress or out of Congress. The governor of New York State is more constrained than any other major state governor in the country in terms of making a decision to cause and call a special election at a time that gives the greatest number of people the opportunity to participate. At minimum, it seems like it's a reasonable thing for the legislature to discuss and make a determination as to whether New York State should be brought into line in a manner that's more consistent with states like Texas, California, Florida, and about 15 of the biggest states in the country. At the end of the day, it's a decision for the legislature and the governor to make.
And with regard to Governor Cuomo, whether he gets in the race or not, he has spent 3 years, I think something like $25 million of taxpayer money in court and in the court of public opinion trying to demonstrate that the allegations against him, sexual harassment allegations against him, were not true or were not founded. Do you think that he has been successful in that, or has any of that led you to alter your position from 2021 that this guy wasn't fit to serve in public office because of those allegations?
At the end of the day, it's a case that Governor Cuomo is going to have to make to the people of New York City.
Okay. Two questions. What are your thoughts?
Everybody with the 2 questions today. Being very generous. It's a Friday. Free Press Friday.
Yeah. What are your thoughts on Governor Hochul's proposal to limit Mayor Adams' authority?
It's understandable to me that Governor Hochul is trying to make sure that the city administration is focusing on the people of New York City and nothing else. And to the extent that there are some guardrails and accountability measures that can be put into place to focus the attention of the city government on the people of New York City and not the whims and wishes of the Trump administration, then that certainly is an appropriate step. Adriano?
No, I agree with the leader that first and foremost are the people of New York City, and particularly as it pertains to this very aggressive Trump effort to bring forward his MAGA agenda to New York City, which I think most of the people, most of the New Yorkers will reject. So we have to have some guardrails.
And then my second question is in regards to congestion pricing. What are your thoughts on the current handling of it by both the governor and in her response to Donald Trump's comments?
Trump administration seems to be targeting the people of New York City and the people of New York State with respect to congestion pricing, support for the migrant situation as allocated by an act of Congress and signed into law by the former president, as well as in other areas, certainly connected to the potential corrupt bargain that's been struck with the city administration. These are all significant areas of concern. I have confidence in Governor Hochul's ability and in Tish James's ability to push back aggressively in defense of the people of New York State through the court system, and that certainly is litigation that I support.
Mr. Jeffries, Jennifer with CBS. I know you've been asked this before, but do you think at this point Mayor Adams can still lead this city?
That's a question that Mayor Adams is going to have to demonstrate and answer decisively and convincingly to the people of New York City. As Adriano mentioned, we're all going through a process of talking to our fellow elected officials, clergy members, community leaders, and our constituents to get their sense of the best path forward. And at the appropriate time, I expect all of us within the congressional delegation will weigh in one way or the other in terms of the future of New York City.
Since everyone got 2 questions, may I kindly get
Yes.
As you know, there is a big concern with the Haitian population here in New York City right now. Anything that's being done on your level or that you think can be done in the meantime? A lot of Haitian New Yorkers we've been talking to are asking for this TPS extension to stay, for the Trump administration, Congress to reverse it. What are your thoughts on that? What can be done, and how can you assure Haitian New Yorkers?
Yeah, it's my honor to represent several communities with significant Haitian American residents within them. And in the next few weeks, we will be meeting about where we are and where we need to go in defense of those communities. All options are being explored on behalf of the Haitian American community and many other communities that have been targeted by the Trump administration, both in terms of congressional action as well as the litigation options that remain available to us in the court. Adriano?
Again, we are very much focused on helping dreamers, farm work dreamers, because for the most part they've been here for over 20 years on the average, and they're nurses and teachers and and they are homeowners and small business owners and members of the armed forces. They should be regularized. Of course, farm workers, because many of them are not showing up to work, and as a result, you're gonna see the prices at the cash register go up eventually. And keeping families together, and that includes TPS, right? And the Trump administration has eliminated TPS. In fact, it was also extended for Venezuelans, and that's been done away with. And so we're for dreamers, farm workers, and keeping families together. And within the families piece is TPS.
Farm workers aren't showing up to work in alarming numbers. Food processors aren't showing up to work in alarming numbers. And construction workers aren't showing up to job sites in alarming numbers. And this is all going to result in costs continuing to go up, not down, breaking the fundamental promise of the Trump administration, which was to address the high cost of living. Trump administration is so busy unleashing extremism on the American people that they are doing the exact opposite of what they promised, which is why inflation is going up and we're seeing the economy falter in real time.
Since everyone else got two questions, so it's okay, I keep the party going. First, wanted to get both your thoughts on some of the news that's just coming in that President Trump is expected to sign an executive order making English the official language of the United States for the first time in history. What are your reactions to that? It's according to a White House official.
Well, like dozens of the other executive orders and actions that have been taken, we're going to have to examine whether what he's doing is actually in compliance with the law and the United States Constitution. And to the extent that it's not, I'm confident that he will be sued. Here's the thing. There are currently more than 100 different lawsuits that have been filed against President Trump and the Trump administration related to at least 35 unlawful and unconstitutional executive actions. Trump administration is not winning in court. They are losing in court over and over and over again. These decisions are being rendered by federal judges who have been appointed by Democratic presidents and Republican presidents, including the Trump administration losing its first case before the United States Supreme Court in the Office of Special Counsel matter. Supreme Court, in a 7-2 decision, ruled against the Trump administration, with only Justices Thomas and Alito ruling for President Trump. No surprise there. Nobody expects Thomas and Alito to ever do the right thing, but 7 justices in the first case to reach the Supreme Court ruled against the Trump administration. We expect to see that continue with respect to this new possible executive action. Until we have an opportunity to actually study it, it's hard to make a comment about it.
Of course, yeah, we would like to see the details of the executive action, but it's mind-boggling that if the intent is to suppress the ability of our young people to be proficient in other languages, I think that doesn't make us competitive as a country. I think we should be encouraging our kids and as many people as possible to be proficient in more than one language so that we can be competitive worldwide. So to the degree that this is an effort to suppress that, I think is a bad vision for the country, and it doesn't lead to us being more competitive with other countries around the world.
And then you mentioned a little bit about the budget. Some of the Senate Republicans have proposed potentially altering the accounting process to make it more based on current policy rather than current law. Some of your colleagues in the Democratic Party have condemned that. Do you agree with them that this is it's a bad idea? Potentially, some of them have compared it to eliminating the 60-day filibuster in terms of a procedural shift in gravity on the Hill.
House and Senate Republicans along with the Trump administration, are playing games because they are struggling to move an agenda that is deeply unpopular with the American people. House Democrats are going to continue to stand up for Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, health care, the Affordable Care Act, nutritional assistance for women, infants, and children, along with our seniors, and for veterans benefits. Donald Trump, Senate Republicans, and House Republicans are targeting the things that matter to the American people while doing nothing about the economy. In fact, the economy is being tanked in real time, and the American people are taking notice. As a result, what we're seeing are games being played by House Republicans and Senate Republicans, including potentially adopting accounting mechanisms that are designed to hide from the American people the fact that the GOP tax scam will increase the debt by more than $2 trillion a year and almost $20 trillion over a 10-year period of time. That's extraordinary. And the Republicans are trying to hide that from the American people.
Could you
Last question.
Could you address the upstate prison strikes that have been going on for nearly 2 weeks? Are you worried that this is still going on? I know mediation talks are happening, there's a tentative deal, but are you worried about the precedent that this could also set for other unions, maybe not being able to control wildcat strikes in the future?
Well, it's a public safety concern. I know the governor is doing everything she can to try to resolve the situation and keep people safe, both inside the correctional facilities as well as outside the correctional facilities and the communities that surround them by bringing in the National Guard. And it's certainly, I think, our hope that this issue will get resolved sooner rather than later.
Are you involved at all with Governor Hochul? I mean, your constituents, some of them are in these upstate facilities, 38 out of 42, that's a lot. Has it gone on for too long?
We've been in contact with Governor Hochul and her administration about the issue, and we're offering any support that we can to try to get resolution.
I spoke to her just yesterday about this, and this is very high, if not the highest on her agenda.